Good morning. It's a particularly rainy day outside today, and so a better place to spend it than inside in the studio taking some photos. And today I have something really cool to try out and play with. It is the brand new Tamron 90mm f2.8 Di3 macro VXD lens for Sony E-mount and Nikon Z-mount mirrorless cameras. And I'm actually really excited to try out this lens because I've never really played with macro photography before. And the lens that I have in my hands right now is actually a pre-production model that was lent to me by the awesome people at Pixel Connection, so thank you to them. I'll talk about them a little bit more later. But the photography community has been asking Tamron for an updated version of this 90mm lens, outfitted for the latest and greatest mirrorless camera technology, for quite some time. Now, macro photography is the process of taking photos of things super close up. Now, not all lenses are outfitted to do this type of photography very well. All lenses have a minimum focus distance. That's how close you can get to your lens before it then becomes blurry because you're too close. And macro lenses have the ability to get super close up to their subject and maintain that focus. So macro photographers specialize in shooting really tiny things and blowing them up on a really large scale. And you'd be really surprised on the different perspective you might have on things when you see something blown up that you've always only seen super tiny in scale. Now, you can absolutely use these types of lenses for other things other than macro photography, but I think it'd be fun to test out this lens and see what kind of high quality, really detailed photos I can get of random things laying around my office, to really test this lens out and see what it can do. So while I get things going, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of the specs about this lens, and at the end of this video I'm going to share my 2 cents on it, who I think it's for, how much it costs, if it's worth a buy, and if I would buy it myself. So to start off, this lens weighs around 22 ounces and is about the size of a pop can without its large lens hood. Now, that lens hood has a sliding door on it that you can easily adjust circular filters that you might have on this lens. It has a 67mm filter diameter, and it's really interesting to see how the lens element doesn't take up the entire real estate on top of the actual lens barrel. I'd assume this is required to actually get that super sharp and shallow focus distance. When actually taking photos, this lens has a minimum object distance of 9.1 inches with a magnification ratio of 1:1. This lens is outfitted with 15 lens elements with a BB-ARG2 lens coating that minimizes ghosting, lens flares, and other chromatic aberrations. And with Tamron's proprietary VXD linear motor focus, this lens has a super fast autofocus and is extremely quiet, which is great for video recording purposes. On the lens itself, there's a focus limiter switch and a focus preset button. Now, this button is programmable through the Tamron utility app, and all you have to do is plug in the lens to your computer via the USB-C port, and you can then program your lens to do a number of different functions, from A to B focus pulling all the way to astrophotography presets. Out of the box, I won't lie, I was instantly hooked by just looking at the sheer sharpness and detail I could see on the back of my camera screen when just setting up these macro photos, and it got my mind racing of all the possibilities that I could do with this lens. So now that I've put in some time using the Tamron macro lens, it's time to review the photos, starting with this awesome Leatherman pouch. And you can just see how a macro lens allows you to really go in and see all the little textures about your subject here. Every single little crack and crevice, and all these scratches on like this silver button, let's say. Insane, because you really can't tell that much stuff is going on when you're trying to look at it with your naked eye. So really high resolution, high detail. I will say, when I was taking these photos, I used a process called focus stacking, which allows me to take many photos and combine them together so that I can pretty much get the entire object in focus. It's not just going to focus on the top or the sides or even the background. But besides doing that, I didn't really touch these photos at all. These are just going to be the plain raw images here. Taking a look at this golf ball now, this thing is super cool because I thought this little print here was flawless on the golf ball, the little Masters logo icon print. But when we take a closer look, you can start to really see sort of the imperfections with the ink and this printing, and you can also see all this dirt and other stuff going on the golf ball. It's not the cleanest golf ball, but makes for a really cool high resolution photo. It's crazy to me just how much detail there is, even in like the little dimples. Sort of the texture of each individual one is different. It even looks like there's some like smaller ones and larger dimples. I thought they were all the same, but no, now that I look even closer, there are some other smaller ones mixed in with the larger dimples. So that's something I didn't even know. That's really, really cool. And now I have my pocket knife here. And when you look really, really closely in this guy, you can start to see sort of the imperfections of using this focus stack technique. I didn't take a lot of time to clean up this image. I was just kind of looking for a sample to see how the resolution of this lens was. Some really cool, interesting detail throughout this knife. For instance, all these little like micro hairs and stuff going on, as well as this scratch that I didn't know was on this knife. I would never have even noticed that scratch there. It kind of bums me out that that's there. All the little scratches and details around the silver and in the actual handle. The edge of the blade is just so tack sharp and so straight, honestly. I'm really impressed of the level of detail that this lens is able to capture. Now this photo is probably my favorite of the bunch, this pack of playing cards. And when you take a close look at this, you can really see all the texture of this cardboard box. And I think it's so fascinating because on this bicycle box, I'm sure a lot of you will have the same deck of cards as I do here. And when you take a close look at the bicycle logo, it doesn't look like there's any sort of pattern or anything on the actual words of bicycle. But when you look at this photo, look at all these little individual squares that were printed around each letter, as well as like the gold. And they also have like a little bit of almost like a drop shadow effect printed on them as well. Because when you look at this pack of playing cards, it just looks like a pretty clean, flat picture. There's just so much more going on. I find this just so much more interesting to look at. Seeing the tears of the edges, you can see all these little fibers going on. I took a really high resolution photo of this camera here, and when doing the focus stack, it does look like it sort of muddied up the image a little bit, but there's just so much detail that I think that's what's giving it that sort of impression. All the individual layers and the cut that it took to make this gear. The ink used for all the letters and all the numbers, all the dust and grime. You can even see the aperture blades themselves within the camera lens, which is super cool. This would be a really cool technique to do if you had sort of like personal items of your own, like cameras or something like that. Maybe something that a family member passed down to you, and you could take a really high resolution photo of this. I would probably do it on like a white background so you don't see as many distractions or imperfections of the background rather than the wood here. I love the look and feel of all these images though. They all have sort of their own uniqueness and character around them, and that's something that you really wouldn't be able to capture without a macro lens. And although I haven't done a lot of macro photography like I mentioned at the start of this video, I have used macro lenses before, but this one is just so fast and easy to use, especially with its autofocus. It's really, really handy to just put on and start shooting in a pinch. I mentioned that macro lenses aren't just for macro photography, they're also great portrait lenses. And so I actually took a couple self-portraits here. Nothing too special, just some side lighting here on my face. And I'm just so happy and blown away by the level of detail with this lens. It is 90mm, so it was quite, far away from me, and it's still a pretty compressed image. But if this is the type of look you're going for and that you like, I mean, just look at that level of detail in the highlights. It looks so, so nice and sharp. In taking these self-portraits, I then got the idea, hey, how close could I get to the lens before even I turn out of focus? And in doing that, I was able to take these insane photos of my eyeballs Now this is crazy. This is what macro photography is all about. To get an image just doesn't seem natural. It seems extraordinary. All these little tiny hairs going around my eye, all my pores stretching, seeing, you know, the veins within my eye, the actual reflection of the light that I was using in my eyeball, and then just the color of my actual iris and eye itself is something that you don't get to see too often. So this photo is really, really cool. And you can see in this photo here, I was actually starting to get too close to the lens, but it actually focused on my eyelashes and then a little bit of my eyebrow here. I think you could imagine all the certain possibilities that are possible with macro photography, and that this is just scratching the surface and showing you that this lens is legit. Could not be happier with the results of this. It's been a blast to play with, and I'm definitely going to be playing with it a lot more, and I think I just might have to put a pre-order in for one myself. So my final thoughts with playing with the Tamron 90mm f2.8, this thing is awesome. Now I do think if you were to throw any macro lens on your camera, it's going to give you that otherworldly perspective that you're looking for in macro photography, but what makes this one really, really cool is how fast it is, how clean it is, and it's only $6.99, which is an outstanding price in my opinion for what you can do with this lens. It's a fantastic portrait lens. It's almost like having an 85 in your bag, except you have a macro lens that has a lot more utility to it. And all this brings me to say that this video really would not have been possible without the awesome people at Pixel Connection. They are my go-to store for all things photo and video. Pretty much all the gear that you see in this video that I shoot with daily to record these types of videos, I got through Pixel Connection. Whether you're new or experienced in photography, the people at Pixel Connection can help you find exactly what you need to make your ideas come to life. They're a local store with a huge inventory on all things from new gear to used gear and the latest gear like this lens, which you can pre-order on their website today, thepixelconnection.com, and this lens is set to release officially on October 24th. So if you want to be one of the first people to try out this lens for yourself, check it out on thepixelconnection.com. Overall, I'm really happy with how this lens performed, and I'm not just saying that because I got to try it out before it officially releases. I didn't have low expectations, but I think that this lens outperformed what I thought it was capable of doing. Tamron has been making such good glass lately in so many different regards. The fact that this lens is so inexpensive, it's a lot easier for hobbyists to get into this craft and to try out these types of art forms. I think that it's just going to grow the art of photography as a whole. Because previously, to get a lens of this quality that does this kind of job would cost you thousands of dollars. So I think in that sense, we're in a really good spot, and I think that this is just the beginning in terms of the types of specialty lenses that we might see for all the latest cameras that we use now. I really love the fact that I could see myself actually using this, and I don't shoot macro photography really at all, like I described earlier at the start of this video. But I could see myself using this lens because yes, it is great for macro photography, but I can use it for video aspects, such as getting B-roll of other new products that are coming in that I review, or detailed shots at events or parties or weddings and stuff like that. Product photography. You saw just how close I could get to my face to really see the emotion within my eyes and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of opportunity that I never would have really explored without trying this lens out, plus the fact that it's only $6.99. Like, that is quite the deal breaker if you ask me. It's lightweight, it doesn't have a huge profile, I can easily throw it in my bag with a couple other lenses. One thing that was a little bit annoying was that it doesn't have an aperture ring on it, and so you have to manually adjust your aperture within the camera menu system. So that was a little bit of an inconvenience. I feel like we're so spoiled nowadays having an aperture ring on our lenses. But if that's the only thing that I don't like about this lens, I'd say that Tamron did a pretty good job. This lens has all the latest features that a lot of the Tamron lenses have, which is great. I have the really quiet autofocus system, the really fast autofocus system, all the different focus abilities with the focus preset button, and the ability to use the Tamron utility app is really, really cool. If you shoot on Sony cameras or Nikon Z-mount cameras and you're looking for a macro lens, I think this is the one. And if it's not the one, it's definitely the one to start with. And then if you need more out of your lens, I don't know how you could really get more out of it, but You can always upgrade down the line. I would definitely start with this one. If you think that I missed anything about this lens, feel free to leave me a comment and I'll try and answer any questions that I can about it, whether it's related to how this lens operates, the quality, the feel of the lens, although I'm sure there's things that I missed. And like I said, if you are interested in pre-ordering this Tamron 90mm macro lens, it is available on thepixelconnection.com. It officially releases October 24th. I think it's definitely being added to my wish list. Thanks to the folks at Pixel Connection for letting me try out this lens early, and I hope to see all you guys in the next video. We'll see you later.